morning. Wow, busy weekend. I was hoping people would get up this morning and come here. Welcome, Lake and Wildlife monthly meeting. Today's meeting, as you know, is on dredging, and our speaker, Paul Slovisky, is here, and early, up and early. And so when we start today, I just want to go back through, as I always do, our mission. It's a privilege to be in Bentry, which includes the responsibility to take care of our natural world around us. Therefore, Lake and Wildlife works to preserve the natural beauty and wildlife of Bentry by encouraging BTCI and all our residents to be good stewards of our natural resources. And our plan and our mission and vision is to always monitor, educate, and volunteer. And we're here today to educate, and maybe we'll pick up some volunteers. Today, we'll welcome our new partners. We'll have a board liaison report from Sandra from the board of directors. Committee reports, our treasurer's report, and then on to sediment and dredging with Paul. Okay, our board of directors report. Sandra.
Morning, everyone. Just very quickly, the board voted on two matters. Most of you probably have heard about it. We voted to suspend the operations at the stables temporarily and to cancel Keeve's contract effective December 31st. We also voted on encroachments on common property, changed the rule that the board will not only have to see and approve minor adjustments to encroachments on common property, but to all encroachments on common property. The president has decided that we're going to establish two new committees. We're looking for volunteers to work on them. One is involves the AGA fees and the how to distribute them, and just to review them and what we're doing with them. A second is a documents committee, and we're going to review all of the documents we have and rules that we have, and review to see what new rules we'll need and revisions to old ones. So those are two new committees, and we need volunteers. The third thing, the annual meeting's coming up on October 13th. We encourage everybody to attend. At the meeting, the votes will on the CC&R changes and on our 3 new board members will be announced. We will also have a president's report, a treasurer's report, and a general manager's report. So it will be more than just announcing the board members. Finally, I'm going to put in another plug for the directory. We are updating the 2025 community directory. I've gotten some pretty good responses, but now it's kind of slowed down. So if you haven't updated your entry, I encourage you to do so as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Committee updates. Before we get into the committee updates, just a couple public announcements, so to speak. First of all, as you all know, it's Safety Day today. And so the fire trucks and the Flight for Life helicopter will be over at the beach today between 12 and 1. Mike asked me to announce that. There's flyers over there on the table for you. A couple other quickies. One is, if there is anyone here in Lake and Wildlife that knows how to make chili, that's not me. Kim asked that if there is, we need a representative that might help on their fall festival to have chili over there on the table. So if that's possible, that would be helpful. You can let Kim know if you'd like to do it. The other thing is, I think today it's appropriate just to spend a minute in maybe 30 seconds in silence and thoughts and prayers for those held in his path. Let's bow our heads and ask them to be safe. And the Lord look over them and their families and everyone here who knows someone. And may they be in peace and resolve through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Okay, now I know there'll be a lot of other announcements as we go along, but those were the two major ones. And one last one I want to mention is, of course, you know, Tammy and Bill Johnson are loading semis on Monday to go up there with cleaning supplies, buckets, baskets. I personally gave a carload up there emptied my basement. But please contact Tammy and Bill if you have anything that you'd like to bring over there. I understand they're also collecting for that run out at the tavern, so you can leave things there. But contact Bill and Tammy if you've got something to go. Thank you. Okay. Fundraising. Marietta, would you like to speak for a moment?
First of all, I'd like to thank Denise because she ran the Whispering Springs fundraiser, which was more than we anticipated because it had to be delayed for a week. So give her a hand for doing that. And Teresa Hoppy, another one of our talented volunteers, is working on developing our third year of gnomes, and you may have seen the pre-orders online. So if we encourage you to get yours ordered ahead of time this year. They're being customized to different themes, so hopefully that'll be to your liking. The next thing is our collections sheet is on every other chair, so you can see the kinds of things we're looking for this time around. We are collecting the week of the sale, which dates are on there as well. We are going to have a volunteer meeting, just one volunteer meeting before the sale, which is going to be October 22nd at the Tavern, 11:30. I'll be sending out an email, but even if you've never volunteered before and you just want information, you're welcome to attend. The sign-up Genius link is going to go live later this week, and that's where we sign up for different shifts. They're mostly 3-hour shifts during the sale, but the week prior to the sale, when we're collecting and sorting and pricing, you can come for an hour or at whatever time you might have available. And I just appreciate everybody who continues to support this event because it's one of our major fundraisers for Lake and Wildlife and enables all the other committees to do what they do. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Eldon's not here today, but as far as wildlife, as you know, the deer are out. They're doing fine. They're eating good. The hogs aren't around, which is good. And the geese are flying back and forth, and hopefully they know which direction is south. So we want them moved along. And as you know, Eldon's looking for a replacement next year, so if there's anybody interested in Lake and Wildlife, he would appreciate that. Yes?
What happened to the
turkey? They're a little sparse right now. They're hiding back in the woods. Of course, they got plenty to eat, so they're not out up on the roadside trying to find food, so we won't see as many for a while. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Lake and Streams, Huff, you got some words for us?
The lake, the fishing has really picked up in the last few weeks since the water temperature has gone from close to 80 on the surface now down to 72, and the fish are much more active. The fishing's been really, really good. To summarize what we've done in the last couple of years, thanks to the board and private donations, we have put in 38 habitat structures, which look like big bushes and trees. They're made out of vegetable plastic. I'm spotting quite a few fish around them and a lot of little fish as well, and that's where they can hide. We also put in 100 artificial Christmas trees, and we put them in 5 at a time in a circle in 20 different spots. And so we've accomplished all the habitat restoration that's necessary. We've got 9 feeders out there working, and the fish are really active on the feeders, and the fishing's great. One problem we have is that we have too many small bass. The lake is a little out of balance because we have an overabundance. So we're encouraging everybody who fish to take out any spotted bass, period, and any largemouth that are 14 inches or less. We're thinking about, and I want to talk to the board about this, we're going to have a bent tree tournament for the residents here in November, and give a prize for the most fish taken out that meet those requirements. I also want to talk to the board about having a high school fishing club come in and help us remove some of these smaller bass. The few people that are fishing out there, we just not doing enough to take those bass out. So I know it sounds funny that we've got too many bass, but what's happening is the growth of the bass is not doing what it should be doing because there's just too many small bass in there. So we're working on that, but all in all, the lake is really doing well and the fishing's terrific. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Huff. And I'll just give 2 minutes on the streams. The streams are doing very well also. They're very low. Believe it or not, you know the storms we had 2 weeks ago, 7.5 inches of rain, 5.5 in 2 days. And the streams held up very well. Our restoration at Coffee Cove held up excellent. Nothing got washed out. And it was at least 24 inches high, the water. And it's normally 2. So I think we've done good work. It's held up. We're on our way to start Mulligan next weekend. We're going to be starting to cut some small trees out down there and get that stream bank restoration done in the next 2, 3, 4 months. So the pH is good, 7 and 8. The dissolved oxygen is also very good, 7, 8, 9. The alkalinity is up, which is good because that's all the fight in the stream to fight all this stuff that's flowing down through and eating up all the nutrients and so on in the leaves and other particles. So the streams are doing very well. And we also did macros last month on a quarterly basis, the macroorganisms that live in the streams, you know, little baby fish. There's also little baby crawdads and things like that. And, with the help of many here, Dara, myself, Dave, Kim, Mason, and others, we got that done, and they were very good. Anything from fair to good. There was no excellent, but that's all right. At this time of year, macros are almost extinct. They're just hiding, laying in wait. It's getting cold, but they're very good, and that means our streams are good, and that means they're alive, and those macros will flow and work and chew up and eat up and create oxygen and other things in our lake. So it's very good, very good. Habitat conservation, Dara.
All right. So, y'all may know, remember the community vision survey that was done some time ago, and then there was a community vision created from that. As part of that, the board asked that a habitat conservation plan be created because habitat in the natural environment here was floated to the top as being a big priority for the community in that community survey. So that committee, led by Brett, included part of I was part of it as the leader of the Habitat Conservation of Lake and Wildlife, but that committee was bigger than just Lake and Wildlife. That plan is now being communicated to the board, it will be communicated to the community or presented to the board at the November working session. And so whatever gets adopted out of that and approved and moves forward as what the community, including the board and BTCI and all of the facets working together are committed to do, the Lake and Wildlife Habitat Conservation team will be a big part of implementing the things. And the plan is really about, if we are serious about maintaining bent trees habitat for our wildlife and the beauty that we enjoy and the trees and the plants and the things that are just part of what makes wildlife habitat, these are the things we need to be thinking about. This is what it means to us as a community. It's what we'll do over the next, and in some cases what we won't do over the next 5 years. That's the scope of this plan. So that's sort of the big picture of where habitat conservation is going. Specifically, we're working with BTCI to put up a bat house that Larry Bishop built, and some of y'all might have seen it at the last Tamarck Treasures. It's a beautiful, complicated, big bat house. It's going to go up on the back side of the dam. Ashley and Travis with BTCI are working with us to put that up. So when we get ready to raise that bat house 20 feet, I mean, it's impressive. We'll have some sort of a ribbon cutting or, I don't know, some sort of event where you can come and see. But if all of a sudden something shows up, not on the lake side, but the back side of the dam, that's what that is. And we're working to communicate more about the areas like the spillway. The spillway, not where the dog, if you're facing the lake on the left side. We've gotten a lot of like, did they just forget to mow this? Well, no, we actually ask them not to mow certain areas there, and there's a long-term plan for what that area will become. And part of it involves just seeing what's going to grow when you stop mowing. And those early succession plants like dog fennel, they're tall, they have deep roots, they help get the soil ready for the next generation of plants that will come next year. And we're doing more to communicate that. There's an echo article, signage, different things so people know what's happening in areas like that where we're working to kind of return it to a more natural state as opposed to just some mowed fields. So anytime you have questions about common areas that look like they're unkept, I can help you see the beauty and what's going on and explain to you what we're doing. So get in touch, okay?
Our November meeting will be presenting the plan that was given to this group. So you'll see it. Not approved yet, but we'll be reviewing one now.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Dara. I know communications next. I don't, just a quickie.
Yeah, communications. I'm going to work this into to the volunteer thing. So
Okay.
a lot of things that go on with Lake and Wildlife. We may not be the group that's constantly on social media or waving in your face, come here, do this. There's so much going on in the community, especially this weekend in Bentry and in the broader Jasper community. So I just want to thank you for being here, for paying attention to the communications that we do put out and responding to that and taking the morning to be here, because it does take a village to keep Bentry in the state that I think we appreciate it in. And it's not necessarily a given that all the beauty will stay here. We have to work toward that goal. It needs to be a conscious goal of us as a community. So if you feel like there's another way to communicate besides Friday News and Echo articles and various emails, let me know. I am in charge of communication. And so if there are other forums or for Lake and Wildlife, there's other forums, everybody kind of does a little bit of their own thing, but please. So volunteers, the volunteer award, we've typically been asking people who've worked in the past period to let us know when we draw a name. We're going to do it this month if you're here today. Megan's going to give us a random name from everybody who's here, because showing up here is a big deal. Getting up on Saturday morning and taking the time to show up here. We're going to pull a name. There are prizes. It's kind of like the treasure box at the dentist when you there's some prizes up there you can pick from if your name is selected. So random name, Megan. I don't know how she's doing random, but she swore it was.
Well, I can hold a quick little report for everyone that's here today. Okay, so we're going to blindly scroll here and press. Todd Jackson.
Thanks for being here, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Dara. Thanks, Megan.
Yes.
All right, computer whiz number one over there. She keeps track of everybody. In communication, just one quickie. I want to thank Kim for getting us the newcomers list. She handles through BTCI via BTAC via Kim and Dave. And so year to date, there's like 50 newcomers. And so we have the list, we have the people, so we can communicate further and better. Thanks, Kim. Appreciate it. Project maintenance, trails, power lines, those are ongoing continually. The power lines are being monitored, shrubs cut with the crews that are out there. There's other projects going on. Art has just finished up some work at the admin building. Art, anything to add? All right. He's got the drains fixed, everything else that's going on. Yeah, and next week, as I say, next weekend we start Mulligan, so there'll be work down there and some volunteer crews, 4 or 5 people going in and trimming stuff back so we can get access, and Ashley can get his equipment in to place those logs at the bottom and so on and so forth. So.
We're also going to try to put a sign
Oh, big one, yeah. Thank you. Special events, LuAnn?
So the end of this month, October 30th, is the employee luncheon. And you know, the employees, especially lately with cutting down trees on Beaver Run and just helping us, there's a lot of activity that employees do that help us that we don't even know is going on. So, you know, there's about, I want to say there's about 90 employees, full-time, part-time mixture. And we make sure we have food for everybody, even if they're not here that day. There'll be to-go boxes sent to kept for them for the next day. So we do cover everybody. It used to be that we got it catered and it cost a lot of money, but the last few years we've done it all ourselves, and it's worked. We've always had way plenty food, and it's been delicious. And they like a little variety. Somebody makes one kind of coleslaw, somebody else makes another. They're good, they like that. So sign-up sheets are here. We need folks that are gonna make pork butts, and I think we just about have that. We've got baked beans we need some more macaroni and cheese. I believe the drinks are all covered now, so, but sign up, and if you can sign up for a setup or helping to serve, clean up. We don't use a lot of folks in there, but if you can help sign up for that. So those sign-up sheets are here. Then right behind that, about a week or so later, is Tamarack Treasures Bakery going on top of the sales. So if you're making baked goods for the employees, bake extra and freeze them to bring us for Tamarack Treasures. If not, just start baking the wheat. But we need baked goods, all kinds. We don't really care what you make. Try something different if you want, or bring an old standard, whatever you like. And pies and cakes and bars, and everybody loves everything. So we need that. We also will have the holiday party, remember, is December 6th on a Friday night. There'll be more info on that, but I just want to make sure I told you so you put it on your calendar. One other thing, this doesn't have anything to do with lake environment, lake and wildlife technically, but it is the environment. Maintenance had sent me some pictures because they still have me shoot pictures, the waste management and back and forth a little bit. Spread to your neighbors that carpeting does not go in the recycling. You can recycle carpet if you work with a carpet recycling company, not bent tree roll-ups. There's enough crap in there and they cut our program. Not waste management, they just haul from point A to point B. It's the recycling processor that would be the one who'd say, don't bring us that crap again. Because if we contaminate too much, that shuts down the program. So spread to your friends and neighbors that think it doesn't matter to look at that sign, so I don't have to put out an email to people. So, and they will get a $1,000 fine if they get, I believe it's still $1,000. If anybody has questions on employee or anything.
Let me make a comment about getting rid of things. I found that the recycling center that's right beyond Walmart in town, it's like 2 streets up, they take everything. So if you have things like, I had a broken rocker. I took that up there, they charged me a few bucks to get rid of it. So, because I was looking for somewhere to get rid of stuff, other than, you know, just our garbage waste here.
Yeah, and that's Pickens County.
Right.
They do garbage and recycling, and they'll take anything, and they'll also take your shredded, if you want stuff shredded, they can do your shredded office. They will take glass because they're doing volumes, they can handle glass. So if you have questions on that, holler at me and I'll help you on that too. So, okay, thank you.
Thanks, LuAnn. Thank you. And thank you and Robert again for getting the donuts and coffee for us this morning. She got up early to make the donuts. Yeah, and that recycling is very good, and they even take old paint cans, even if though there's some paint in them, and you put some of that little kitty litter in there, and they'll take it. So it's amazing what they'll take. And they only charge you a buck a bucket. So I mean, what the heck? I mean, okay, let's go on. Before that, we did volunteers, but I don't want to cut Mason out. Mason, you got something on trails?
Not much on trails, just if anybody hikes in the trails and see a tree down, please give me a call. I don't always find them first, so it helps when I get notice that somebody's found it. We had a real big mess on Beaver Run that was a little bit too much for us to handle, and we got Travis from BTCI and his crew out there, and they cleaned it up, got the path open for us. So the sooner I get noticed, the sooner they get cleared. And I just appreciate everybody reporting that in. Chestnut Cove trails, I started cutting in the path on the upper reaches of the Orange Trail, and I've noticed that I need to add some more blazes because I almost got lost out there. So I've got the blazes, I'll get them on the trees and put a few more intermittent so you can always see a blaze on that upper reach, because that is virgin trail up there. And it's really a nice trail, so we got work to do on it. Just let me know if you see trees down.
Thanks, Mason. Appreciate all the work you're doing up there. I understand that partner you got that's kind of low, big, and black that's kind of been showing up around you, like 50 feet away when you don't see him. Yeah. He's being careful though, but he's got a nice new work partner. I don't think, yeah. Stephanie doesn't either.
I love seeing them, but not when you turn around and they're 20 yards away.
Yeah. Especially on Beaver Run, that was a surprise. Yeah, well, you just be careful, we need you. Okay. Denise, would you like to talk about the financials?
As you can see, we're doing pretty well. We started the year with about 11,000. We have brought in about 17,000, and we've also spent through that. But we've got another Tamarack Treasures fundraiser coming up, and there's also budgeted projects on trails and education and other things that are still budgeted to go through. So we appreciate everything that you do and contribute volunteer time and money, and just know we're managing it and doing pretty well. So thank you for your support.
Thank you, Denise. Upcoming events as I mentioned, November we have a change, and we will be going through the Bent Tree Habitat Conservation Plan that Rick mentioned, which is a very thorough, detailed plan that the board has asked for, that has been well done with a lot of work and time between Rick and Dara and their entire ad hoc committee. And it's going to be something we really need to look at because it's the future. And I think it's very important. Obviously, Rick and Dara do too. So we're going to be going over that plan in detail. And I think anybody that here in Bent Tree knows anything about habitat would like to be here just to look at that, because that's the plan for the future. December, of course, will be our annual report from Jim Pryor on BTCI and where they're at and where they're going. Always remember, what do you think? You want to let us know? How can you help? We always look for volunteers, comments, volunteers. You can email Bentree Lake and Wildlife LW@gmail.com. Now, we're going to move on next to the Tamarack Sediment Survey and Solutions with Paul. And we'll just take a second or two. I'm going to load his presentation and bring him up and introduce him. So hang tight for just a minute. Okay, we'll get this correct. Paul Slovisky is Director of Operations for the Georgia Division Coastal Southeast Region of Tigris Aquatic Services. He's Director of Operations. He oversees the day-to-day activities of the Lake and Pond Management Department, as well as the Stormwater Infrastructure Maintenance and Repair Department. He coordinates with various regional department heads and supervisors to ensure all the aspects of all the Tigris team are operating in the field and functioning. And Tigris itself is an industry-leading nationwide stormwater service provider. Paul has more than 25 years of experience in the surface water and stormwater management and restoration. Prior to joining Tigris, Paul was the VP of Operations of Aquascape Environmental, an Atlanta-based leading provider of real sustainable aquatic ecosystem solutions for stormwater, lake, wetland, and fishery. Paul started his career with Aquascape in 1998 as an environmental technician, working on project management of stream bank and wetland restoration and stabilization projects, working his way up through the ranks and assuming the VP of Operations role in 2010. Prior to Aquascape, Paul worked in an environmental technician role for the United Consulting Group at Norcross, offering geotechnical and environmental consulting, inspection, testing, and monitoring service to hundreds of clients across Georgia. As you know, Aquascape, Paul and his crew were the ones that did the lake sediment survey here and were on the lake. And Paul's been working with us since, which we appreciate, Paul, on various subjects and questions, including a small committee we had on dredging with the board and other people at BTCI on next steps and kind of how-tos. Paul's got a BS in Earth Sciences from Mercer. Paul's married, his wife Amy, and he has a son Dominic, and they live in Woodstock, and fortunately or not, as Paul said, Dominic's at Georgia Tech. Paul, come on.
Good morning. Brian, the committee asked me to come up and kind of talk about our study and just give general information about your lake and the processes involved with sedimentation and dredging. So we'll start off with kind of just a brief overview of the processes and how sediment gets there, and then kind of go over some of the dredging methods and how we get it out and maintain the lake for future health. A lot of people don't understand coming from here. Basically, in Georgia, all of our lakes are man-made, lake and ponds. Once you get down towards Florida, you run across a couple of natural lakes, mostly karst type topography, but almost all of ours are an impoundment of some sort or an excavation. Your lake is a reflection of your watershed. As they say, stuff flows downstream. So what comes into your lake or pond is coming from what surrounds your lake and pond. Y'all's is, for Lake Tamarack, is quite large. We estimate just about 5,300 acres or 8¼ square miles, which is pretty large. As you can see with the funny picture of the cows there, that's quite common. Horsing practices are some of the worst as far as sedimentation and nutrient loading, because the horses get down in them and tear them up, and cattle as well. Like we said here, problems with that is nutrient loading, organic matter, and one of the big ones is sediment. Kind of the process is known as eutrophication. It's the aging process of a lake or a pond. When a pond gets old, they call it eutrophic, and in our industry, the pond or the lake is dying. You can see, you know, when they get older, like us with humans, the older we get, more problems we got. Got aches and pains. You start dealing with water clarity issues, the dissolved oxygen and nutrient loading being one of the big ones. Your aquatic weeds and nuisance algae and stuff really start kicking off just due to the nutrient loading. Loss of habitat from us in a community like y'all's is lack of use. When you stop being able to get into a cove is really when you notice it. Like we said, left undone, a lake will just kind of go back and die and go back to its natural environment. This is one here. If y'all are familiar with the Roswell area, is one of my best examples is Mountain Park, their upper lake. It's probably now about 60% smaller than it was if you look at it from an aerial, the whole upper end. And Highway 92 had a lot to do with that. We said the number one biggest killer of lakes and ponds is sediment. A lot of that, you know, as soon as you impound a drainage area, stream, wetland, it will start collecting. We like to tell people Your lake and pond is like a bathtub. When stuff comes in there, it doesn't leave unless you physically take it out. So whether that's nutrients, sediment, trash, once it's there, it's stuck. Good example of it is here. This was a project that we worked on in Canton. That's about 2 acres of that used to be lake. They were building a golf course, and a hurricane actually came through, and they didn't have erosion control practices, and they got in trouble. So it can happen really quick. Most times it happens slowly over time. So one of the good figures I like giving out, it's pretty dramatic for people, especially a lot of communities in the metro area are using their neighborhood ponds for community irrigation. Doesn't take a lot of sediment to lose a lot of water or volume that you have for use in your lake or pond. So to get into the study that we did for y'all, we focused on 3 main inlet coves. You can see on the map here. Kind of shows the measurements and the areas that we went through on Cove 1, Cove 2, the outlined area, like some of y'all mentioned me talking to you this morning, that's the exposed sediment area there that the geese and stuff like landing on and standing on there, and then Cove 3. It's just a physical measurement. We go through with a survey grade GPS to be able to go back and reproduce those points. It's accurate down to about 30 centimeters. And then basically a physical measurement of the water depth, and then a rod is pushed through to the hard bottom to get you a measurement of sediment thickness. So if we get to the numbers, kind of dramatic. The big one on the right is the sediment volume, based on the cove. From a erosion control or management standpoint, the industry standard is once things have been filled by a third is when we want to maintain them. As you can see here, we're well past 50% full. Cove 3 being the most dramatic, where it's 75% full by volume. From a lake and pond management standpoint, generally we like to keep a 3 to 4 foot average water depth. That helps with keeping down aquatic vegetation and bad nuisance algae and stuff. You can see here we're well below that, with generally 2 foot or under on both of those coves, or all 3 of those coves. What does that equate to? The column on the far right is cubic yards of sediment. Little misleading just because you can look at you're dealing with different surface areas. Cove 2 is less than an acre that was studied. The other 2 are acre and a half, and so you're going to have more sediment just by the larger areas. But like we said, Cove 3 was 75% full, so that's a lot of sediment. Layman's terms for cubic yards, I can kind of step back so everybody sees. If you deal with a dump truck, if it's dry, holds about 15 cubic yards. So we kind of calculate that out for you. That's a lot of dump trucks to be hauled out. Kind of put it on the bottom. If you have an acre of land and you fill it by a foot, that's a little over 100 dump trucks to fill it a foot. So that's when it comes to dredging, one of the big concerns is, well, where do you take that material? You know, a lot of dredgings like y'all had in the past, when you do it, if you can leave it on site, and everybody's like, well, we'll just stack it over here. But you don't really have a grasp of, once you start putting it in terms of dump trucks, they go, well, we're not going to fit 100 dump trucks there.
So Cove 1 would be up by the boat dock, right?
Correct.
And then as we come down, Cove 2 would be
By the beach.
And Cove 3 is basically Mulligan's Inlet in that area, that cove.
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So pretty dramatic. amount of volume. That being said, and we can get into that later on the dredging part, nobody ever dredges to remove 100% of sediment. It's just not feasible usually from a cost. It just becomes cost prohibitive. You want a maintenance dredge to get back to that 3 to 4 foot average usable water depth. Sediment, like we said, is costly. A little bit less so up here because you've got areas to leave it on site. So you trend towards the lower end of that number, but in the metro area, a lot of times the only choice they have is to take it to a dump. And unfortunately, the dump's only going to take so much if they're capping one of their landfills or something like that. So what a lot of the dredgers are doing now is they'll get with a farmer and basically buy a part of his pasture and just that he wants raised up, and they'll just keep adding dirt to it. Someone asked earlier as far as the dirt, most especially up here, the sediment, everybody thinks maybe the sediment's toxic or stuff like that. In the grand scheme of things, the sediment is nutrient rich. You get a lot of phosphorus and stuff that collects in the pond. It is usable. It just takes a while to dry out and become workable. Into the dredging methods, two basic types, doing it in the dry or doing it in the wet. What a lot of people typically think of as dredging is here. It's a barge. It's got an auger head that goes down, and they basically pump out the sediment. Difficult to do in especially the metro area, because with this method, the main thing, it has to go somewhere to de-water. So basically, this project here was actually at the King and Queen building. They pumped it across the street into another pond that they drained. So basically, all the sediment goes in there with water and everything, sits there for weeks until it dries out, and then they can load it on dump trucks and take it out. So it's kind of a two-step process. Gets expensive because you're double handling stuff. Also in the wet, they can do the aquamog, where they use barges, and he's basically just digging the sediment out from the lakeside, floating on this aquamog, and then he loads it into barges. Really effective. The biggest complaint you get with that is basically the entire lake is probably going to turn muddy because he's just stirring up sediment nonstop. And so it's a little hard to kind of manage that. Typical dewatering site, this was on the backside of a dam. You can see the pipe where they pump it in, and it's basically just sludge that goes in there. They raised that area up. That was in the beginning. They raised that up about 6 feet. With the pumping, some of the new stuff that they've come along with, you can kind of see these silt bags. They can use it for shoreline stabilization, where they'll pump them into bags. The silt bags work really well. The hard part is equate that back to like what you see here to a dump truck. They really only maybe 2 dump trucks worth there. It adds up quick. So putting it into bags is an option, but you're not going to get rid of a lot of it quickly in that way. Kind of the most typical method in the metro area is they'll lower the lake and dig it out in the dry, 2 to 3 feet, or to expose the sediment that they need to get to, and then there's long reach excavators to pull it out. You definitely want to use somebody that's qualified and knows what they're doing, even the guys that know what they're doing. When we say in the dry, it doesn't always mean in the dry. We get a lot of calls from people that kind of rent a machine and go out there. Even if it looks dry, these things drop out. That was a total loss on a $500,000 machine. And that, unfortunately, they had to call a dredger to come out and get them to pull them out. But and they just sunk, basically, and then it rained, which made it worse, and came up and flooded it. So it happens, but those guys, like we say, for the dredgers, it is not a complicated process. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you're just moving dirt, but these guys have been doing it a long time and know all the tricks in the trade. I mean, your normal grader can still just move dirt, but usually doesn't have the type of equipment and infrastructure that and the know-how that they have to get themselves out of problems. Like I said, in the dry, these guys got track dump trucks. A lot of times they just build a road in on the pond bottom and then work their way out. In the dredging business, like I said, what they do is try to maintain. Most of these guys, they're going to work to your budget, but they will work with you. They want to give you the best bang for your buck. Where, you know, removing a foot of silt way out into the lake is not as good as them being able to remove 4 feet of silt quickly in the coves and get it out where you're going to be the most noticeable. That's where their knowledge really comes and become invaluable. Small jobs, we can do it with vac trucks. That gets, on a per cubic yard basis, really expensive, just because a lot of times half the stuff that they're sucking up is water. But clearing culverts and small exposed areas, they can suck that up with vac trucks pretty quick. The question always comes in, how do we stop it? You can't really stop sediment from coming into a pond. You can mitigate it to a certain extent with your stream restoration projects. That takes down a lot of volume coming in from the bank erosion and channel incision. That is a great method. As far as stopping it, the main tool that we have is installing silt traps. The biggest misconception that homeowners usually have is installing silt traps isn't stopping it, it's just mitigating it and slowing it down to where you can manage it a little bit more frequently. It keeps the silt from going into the body of the lake. So in the case on the left, this is the silt pond. Basically comes down, fast moving water, hits the dam or the culvert system and protects the main body of the water. The 4 bays on the inlets, basically again a big plunge pool, fast moving water comes in, lets it settle, and the silt comes out, protecting the main body of the lake. In most cases, they kind of set up a low head dam. Again, on the inlet, a good example of this is Lake Windward. Up in Alpharetta, they've got silt traps like these on every inlet that comes into their lake. Again, you're not stopping the sediment, you're localizing it. So in Lake Windward's case, they have a dredger out there every single year. And basically, I think they've got upwards of 15 traps. So he's doing 4 to 5 traps every year on a circular basis, so that they get to it about every 3 to 4 years. Problem is, when it's a commitment, is if you don't, this is one of the good examples I got. This silt trap here is actually up here. They spent probably about $30,000 putting in that silt trap, never maintained it once, and now you can walk down below it because filled up the silt trap. They never went to the commitment of doing it, and then it just basically encroached and goes. So now you just have to pay a dredger to start over and dredge it all out again. So it is a commitment on the silt traps. You can't really stop it, but you're still dredging. You're just dredging small amounts from a localized area that they can get to usually easily, and it cuts down on the cost. So, and that is all I got. Thank you. Any questions?
Would you be able to return to the slide that shows the pre-flow codes and the percentages of sediment in the last column? Yeah, one of these.
Yep.
There we go. Okay. So these results, if I understand correctly, are from a year ago.
Yes, I believe 2023, the end of 2023,
Okay,
correct.
end of 2023, so we are 1 year out, and we were anywhere from 60, almost 65% to 74% of sediment volume then.
Mhm.
Do we have any idea of what that is now? I'm fairly assuming, I think it's greater.
It would definitely be greater just because you're on live streams in each one of those coves, so sediment's constantly coming in. You would have to do another study to know how much greater it is. You know, in the case of, and I'm purely going on assumption just from discussion with Brian, I know Cove 1 had been to a certain extent dredged 10 years ago, something like that. I don't know that the other ones have ever been dredged, so I think it's in our report. I can't remember how old Lake Tamarack is, but you kind of got to put it to the age of the lake as well. So that's happened over time.
Okay, and could you repeat the percentage at which it's recommended that the sediment volume is kept if you want to maintain your lake?
From, I'm equating it to erosion control best management practices. We maintain stuff when it gets 30% full, a third full, yeah. So, and that's purely 50% for sure. Go ahead.
I'll go. You had talked about the lake or pond being like a bathtub, right? Know where to go. We have the spillway, so we have there's some amount of throughput in the lake. It's not completely. What difference does that make, if any?
Nothing on sediment, because if you know, kind of get into stream dynamics, but when the fast moving, it has to keep that sediment in suspension to get it that far, and it wouldn't on a lake your size, unless there's a stream right by that spillway. It might get a little bit of sediment going out that way. When the hard thing to equate for a lot of people in the Georgia Piedmont region is we've got colloidal clays. So like down where I'm at, like Lake Allatoona, you know, you can turn a pond chocolate milk brown after a rain event with very little actual sediment, just because colloidal clays turn it turbid. So a lot of people see that and equate it to bulk sediment volume, which isn't really the case. But the inlets is where your sediment drops out because fast moving water hits the slow and it can't keep that bulk sediment in suspension. That's why the silt traps work. Yeah.
You know, you talk about where we are, and you've done any work with Tree about what we can do about where we would put all this sediment if we take it out, and how we go about doing it?
I have not, no. That would be like the next step is, well, two next steps is, we can all dream, you gotta have a budget of how much you're gonna pull out, and then we work of options of where you can put it, yeah.
What have you, in places like this, what have you seen in the past, options of taking it somewhere? We're gonna build a mountain, or do we find a farmer that's got a low spot?
Both. I mean, I know in the past, when y'all did it up at the boat ramp, they built an area up there. You could possibly do that again. In the past, a lot of dredgers would basically put it on the backside of the dam and build the backside of the dam greater. The state's kind of gotten, especially with y'all's being a Category 1 dam, they probably would not allow that. But that used to be a big go-to for them.
Even down at the lower end?
Correct. If you got out of the toe of the dam, you possibly could. That would be up to the regulatory people.
I noticed on the intercoastal waterway in areas where they have long pipes, they take the dredge material and put it into a certain area. Is there any potential here? We have a creek that has generally 30 feet worth of depth, 40 to 50, up to 80 feet, fairly close to the dam. Is there any potential of piping the silt in these deeper and deeper areas to move them from the shallow area into the deeper area?
No, we always get asked that question. In theory, yes, the regulatory committee and the Corps won't let you do it. I mean, in some cases, we don't understand why, because if it's privately owned impoundment, but the regulatory community won't allow it. Yeah. Go in the back.
Hey, on the sediment that's in the lake now, I know that you folks have talked about trying to do some things upstream to mitigate silt traps. Those are what you're recommending? And then are there other items that you folks are recommending?
At this point, especially on these coves, I wouldn't put silt traps in until you did some maintenance dredging, because those silt traps, I'm not going to say they wouldn't work, but it would be counterintuitive, because you'd be putting a silt trap above existing silt that's already there.
So you're saying that you would actually go ahead and do some lake maintenance prior to putting in the silt traps? Am I hearing
Yes,
that?
that's typically the silt traps don't go in until you have maintained that and gotten it back to where you kind of want that cove to be.
One of the things you quoted was that it's the lake is like a bathtub. If it goes in, it doesn't come out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So in the draft, or at least the dredging plan that we put together, there is an initiative to take and go off and dredge the golf course ponds as a prerequisite to starting to dredge the lakes. I'm sorry, but I've been unable to take and logically understand this. I think it's misguided in that does not do anything. If a lake is like a bathtub, a golf course pond is also like a bathtub. It does not defy gravity. Silt will not come out of it unless there's an internal force that pushes it out. So I know that this is kind of catching you a little off guard, but Brian, I'm expressing my previous concern that we're going off and spending $100,000 to dredge golf course ponds in advance of monies that were earmarked for dredging the lake, and putting it in advance of dredging the lake, which is different than what I'm hearing from Paul here. I don't know how to express it, but it sure seems like misguided direction. And I think that the Lake and Wildlife, the folks that are working on that plan, as well as the board of directors, need to take a good hard look at this. I'm really, it's hard to express the frustration of living adjacent to one of these, and that is the thought process.
Thanks, Randy. What about moving the stuff to the side of the lake? So not taking it out, but sort of along the lines of what Huff was saying, moving it, can you reshape the shoreline sort of and kind of, is that a possibility?
Again, the regulatory, probably not, because you probably wouldn't get, you wouldn't get a lot of volume out, but then you also, you get into an area of the regulatory community probably wouldn't allow that, because then they would consider your filling a buffer and filling a wetland versus maintenance dredging. They would rather, it's not outside the possibility. You may spend more to get them to approve it than it would be worth, possibly.
My understanding, to address the question about the golf course ponds, the two ponds that are proposed to be dredged are not ponds for the golf course. They are silt traps, basically, or silt ponds to catch silt as it comes down the creek.
Full disclosure, for my input, I know nothing about the golf course ponds, so
What I'm saying is that that $100,000 or whatever it is to take silt that has been captured out so those ponds will continue to catch silt before it goes into the lake.
Possibly.
So that's a remedial type process, and it's not for the golf course, it's for
Possibly.
keep silt out of the lake.
Possibly.
Those ponds will still continue to take and gather on the silt as long as it's not full and they're not full.
One by my house is
When they did the dredging 10, 15 years ago, and they pulled it out, I think it was onto a barge, and they moved it over to build up that one area in the cove, in one of the coves where it's a big grassy area. Does the committee that's working on this, do you have any statistics on how many dump trucks worth of dirt, or how many acres worth of dirt that was? Because it, built up a good little bit of land and it sticks out a long ways. You know where I mean? Okay. I mean,
It's in
is
code
there any-
3, right?
Code 1.
Yeah,
It's code 1.
Where the boat, marina, boat ramp is.
No, it's not down here by the beach at all. It's
down by Mulligan,
where the pump house,
Oh,
where
okay.
that pump house is on, is it?
Oh, gotcha.
Code 3. But anyway, do we have the numbers on how much that actually was, that was pulled out? And so
I don't know. That was before my time.
Yeah, that would be for the committee, for the question of the committee.
Gotcha.
So code 3, we know that we're gonna have sediment for the next 100 years. Is it possible to create a silt dam at the end of code 3 and say that is no longer a lake and we're gonna let that become wetlands? What would be the negative aspects of that? People have lakes.
Yeah, the problem there is you've got homeowners there that bought lakefront property. Because of the lack of maintenance and the lack of sediment removal, they are losing lakefront property and they're losing access to the cove. That says 1 foot of water, but if anybody's taken a look at it in the last 3 months, before it rained, it was a landmass. Several feet out into what is the cove. So, I mean, you've got
And
private
just to
property
clarify,
where-
that's 1 foot average, so that takes into account the further ones out there with 3 feet deep. Yeah, because I took a lot of those measurements, so I met through the upper end. And
Visual observation of that cove before the rains came through it was basically a huge landmass.
Yeah.
With very little water, no longer accessible to take a kayak or a boat out in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, to answer your question, we do have customers. I mean, there's, as long as you're not, it's not, infringing on like a stormwater pond, you can't, but we have plenty of customers that, yeah, they don't have the funds and they go, well, it's just going to become a wetland. And there's not necessarily a law that says you have to dredge your lake. But again, then you get into loss of property, somebody had loss of access, and then you also, by letting it not become a pond anymore or lake, you're gonna also have to deal with the, it's gonna catch a lot of trash. It basically become a bog. I mean, some people find that beautiful. I like swamps, but a lot of other people that have a house there probably would not want a swamp in their backyard. So it kind of a give and take. But to answer your question, there's nobody holding a gun to your head that says, yes, you have to dredge and you have to dredge right now.
And what can be done by landowners in Bedford to reduce the origin of the silt?
The origin of the silt? I'm not going to say that you can't do anything. The bulk of the silt that is impacting your lake is watershed driven and comes upstream of y'all. But on a homeowner standpoint, we see it all the time. People just don't kind of understand I want to redo you guys don't have a lot of lawns like typically down in the metro area, but they'll gut their lawn and scrape it up, and then they get a storm. Well, half their lawn is now in the lake. You can have somewhat of an impact on a residential lot aspect, but you're not going to make a drastic effect on the bulk of the sediment that's coming through. Y'all are doing a good job with you'll have more, I guess I'm talking in circles, but you'll have more effect doing the stream restoration type projects than unless you live on a stream, than you would of just land use practices on your individual lot.
About the vegetation, that's affected by the deer.
What's that again?
The vegetation is affected by having too many deer. They strip it off.
Okay. Yeah, the more vegetative cover you can have, the better. You're gonna.
Can everybody hear that? Everybody heard that, right? Yes. Say that again?
Yeah, the more vegetation, the better. Yeah.
We'll make sure everybody heard
Are you familiar with any successful funding applications through grants, state, local? Is there a vested interest in the local government or state government in keeping lakes viable?
Yes, Gwinnett County did for a while. There are grants out there. For the most part, it's you don't find many people that are going to go through the effort to get it. I guess it would be it is time consuming to go through them and try to get them. I've never tried to go through that process, but there have been communities that have and gotten grants and stuff into it. There was one in. You think outside the box too. There was one in Crab-Up Hole. Of course, you're talking much smaller. It was only like a 2-acre lake. They sold theirs on Facebook Market. And people bought their sediment. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. Yeah.
This being a private lake, I don't think that would eliminate any kind of federal funding, federal grant.
Not necessarily. Just because on a watershed type basis, you're providing a somewhat flood protection downstream, to portions of Pickens County. So it would be worth a discussion. They build watershed. They haven't since the 60s and 70s building watershed lakes, but that's the point of a watershed lake, is to kind of protect downstream from flooding. So.
Yeah, at the beach area, whatever year they dump more sand, is there some way that sand can be recovered?
The dredger might be able to pull it out. It's just, it probably wouldn't be as pretty because you're going to get bottom sediments and organics that are going to be mixed into it.
But they mine sand using let's say a Huffines spiral or something like that.
What's that again?
They mine sand by separating it through a Humphrey spiral or some other mechanic.
Yeah, a dredger wouldn't have that to do that. They're just there to dig it out. So it would probably become cost prohibitive to have somebody come in to do that, but it'd be worth looking into.
So you believe from looking at our lake, and I know you only study these tree codes, or did we study other places? So I guess where I'm going is, at a general part of the lake that's not one of these codes, does it have sediment along the edges, or did we not look at that?
There is, but most of it is where you're getting bulk sediment influxes at your inlets. You'll get some from just surface runoff, but not usually enough to be appreciable. If you have access to the report, we did take measurements on other inlets. A lot of those other inlets didn't take a lot of measurements. One, they're a lot smaller, but then also started taking measurements and quickly got into 25-foot plus of water because it's down further in the lake. So you're from a, again, from the intent of the study is more of a dredging feasibility, and that concentrates on the areas on the upper end of the lake where most of your sediment is going to be predisposed to fall out.
Paul, I want to help you for just a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just for general information, on the survey, as you say, Paul did the whole lake, he focused on those 3 areas, 1, 2, and 3. You see the results, they're up there. The other areas of the lake, yes, have some sediment. As far as the plan, which has been developed and then of course can be amended as we go along, those 3 codes are bad, and which one do you do first? The golf course, Randy, like you said, those 2 holes, should that just be done as an aside when we can get to it and how? That's being also considered, and your input helped with that. So, I think, stand by. This is flexible because it's your lake, and it's your property, and it's what's more important, which cove, when. We all know that in Mulligan, there's an intake pipe for a pumping station, and that pipe is out there. And if we don't dredge that pipe could be filled up with mud and create problems. So that is a priority. And so we look at that, but as you say, upstream, and the golf course came into it after the fact. He never looked at it, we never asked him to look at it because that was not a factor at that point. It was discovered after that those holes are filling up and they directly go down through. But aside, the focus is on the 3 coves. The last time this was done, in 08 and the beginning of 09, I have some paperwork, old board meetings, and my neighbor Mary Lou, who y'all know, who had, they took out 15,000 cubic yards in 08, 09. They pretty much did it down to the bottom in those 3 areas. So it's been 15 years. So what you see here is 15 years. They took out 15,000 cubic, so they were pretty close. At that point, it was about $30 to $32, $35 a cube. They spent about $500,000, it's my understanding, and there's people here that may have been here then that know that maybe it was a little more than $500,000. But that's right in there, and today's ballpark is $50, low end. But so if you look at all the cubic feet and cubic yards, you got about $1.2 million worth of stuff out there to take out. So now we have to decide, what do we do, when, how do we finance? I know that's the board's decision and our input, and Randy, people like you that will help, and so we take next steps. But I just wanted to give you kind of a perspective of what was done, when in the past, and how much and where. And I think the number one thing is that the lake is the number one priority of our residents. And I think Lake and Wildlife and our board has said, hey, that's number one in the questionnaire, in the survey. So we will continue to move forward, see what we can do, when, how, with what money, with Paul's help. And I'll let you ask any further questions. I just want to give you a little.
Sure, and it's hard to make a kind of a, you can kind of see, I can make a determination just based on the numbers, but, from a community standpoint, it will take hours of discussions of, from the numbers, Cove 3 is the worst. But, just pointing out, you may live on Cove 2, well, that's priority for you because now you can't get to your dock. It's a give and take, and it will be a process to get to the end result of it. Just has to come out.
So if we did these silt dams, then our maintenance guys could, with the right equipment, clean that out.
Possibly. You just have to do it on a regular basis. But then again, there's more involved to it than just getting it out. You got to get it somewhere. It's got to go somewhere. So, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
This probably isn't a question for you, it's more for the board. Do we have any money allocated for that yet, or no? Does anybody know?
Some, but not 1.2 million.
That's $100,000 a year for 5 years is what's in the preliminary,
Okay.
Starting this year or next year?
starting this coming year.
So you're planning it?
It's a preliminary, we're going to go through the budgeting process here for the month with a preliminary spreadsheet as $100,000 a year for 5 years. Not near enough.
Some's better than none. Go ahead.
So I want to go back to that percentage, the sediment percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Is the visual as simple as Cove 3 is at 74%? If we do nothing and that percentage goes to 100%, is the visual as simple as there's no longer a cove there?
I mean, it'll still be a cove. It'll just be, it'll be, the whole cove will look like the upper end of the cove where it's just, you know, a mucky, you know, eventually it will form a stream channel down it and basically go back to just a stream environment. And then, you know, the only, what I always try to tell people that on, especially on larger ponds like that, is that visually you're going to focus on Cove 3, but so if Cove 3 goes away, that volume of stuff that's, that's filling up Cove 3 still has to go somewhere. So now we've just moved it, now it's out into the bay of wherever Cove 3 opens up into. So it's going to be a process of it's just going to kind of keep, you know, encroaching out. It's kind of like the Mississippi Delta. It's just, you know, alluvial fan, just keeps going.
Any way we can redirect the sediment to go to Big Canoe?
I can kind of bridge off of that, but is there any, up here on Beaver Run Trail, Long Swamp,
Okay.
has filled in a lot, you know, where the boat ramp is, and even more in the past 3 years that I've noticed. But is there any responsibility of upstream? I know years ago when they had a big flood and it took out the road and a bunch of other stuff, that somebody upstream paid some money to have that remedy, which wasn't really much, $10,000 today.
Right.
Doesn't do a whole lot.
Typically not unless there is a violation of some sort where a dam blows out or
silt fences out of that creek.
Yeah.
But you can't, nobody has a name on it.
Right, yeah. That's unfortunately, it's quickly becoming a known soil layer in the soil profile is the silt fence layer, because they put in the silt fence, but they don't ever take it out. You know, the development gets built and then 20 years later, the silt fence and post is still there, which just bugs me to no end, but that, you know, that's my soapbox. But
Any other questions? Not as of right now, right? Paul, thanks very much.
Absolutely, anytime.
I've been asked to give Paul a volunteer shirt because he's volunteered to help us so much, and he hasn't sent me a bill yet. Anyway, thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much, yeah. Thank you.